Okay, I can see you now.
All right, great. We're all set. Good evening, everyone. Today is Thursday, March 26th. This is a regularly scheduled and noticed meeting of the Goffstown Planning Board. We have a few items to address here. Before we begin, I'm going to ask everybody to identify themselves. We are conducting this meeting a little differently than normal, pursuant to the emergency orders that are in effect in this state for the current virus crisis. We have members on the line that are calling in, and we have members present so that we do have a quorum. We have changed the setup of the room to try and keep people away from each other, and the applicants have also agreed to come into the meeting one at a time to ensure that we have space, and that if members of the public do want to appear, we have plenty of room for everyone. You should see on your screen a number to call in. We will be taking public comment in conjunction with our applications tonight. If you call in, you will be muted until the time for public comment, at which point we will be asking for anybody who has called in and wants to comment on something that we're addressing to then speak. Before we start all of this, I want to thank everybody for their patience. This is a new process for us, and I particularly want to thank the board members who are here tonight and board members who are participating by phone. They will be observing the meeting on GTV 16, and they are also on the phone so they can hear what's going on. So now that we've started, why don't we start with who's here? David?
David Pierce, I'm an alternate member.
Gayla Breck, alternate member and recording secretary.
My name is Barbara Griffin.
Peter Georgantis, Selectman's Rep.
And then Kim?
Kimberly Pease.
Phil?
Philip Devanza.
Thank you. And also with us on the phone is our town engineer, Sarah?
Yes, here.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you're here. All right. The other thing that will be slightly different for tonight's meeting
Also
is...
Joanne.
Oh, that's right. And also on the phone is our town planner. Joanne, are you there?
Yes, hi, everyone.
All right. For purposes of votes tonight, there will be a roll call vote, which means every member has to vote and be recorded separately because they are not all present in the room. And the first item that we have on our agenda is the minutes of March 12, 2020, with the proposed amendment by Kimberly Pease. Board members, you should have received Kimberly's catch of a word that needed to be changed in the minutes. And do I have a motion on the minutes? I would accept a motion with Kimberly's amendment.
A motion to accept the minutes from the 12th of March, changing the word on page 16 from ephemeral to ephemeral.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And for purposes of this meeting, both David and Gail, who are alternates, will be voting members. Is there any further discussion from anyone on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, Pete,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Gail,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Abstain, I wasn't there.
and Phil.
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion carries. Thank you, everyone. The next item that we have is an item for recommendation for comments to the ZBA for Easy Car Wash. This is a facility that's proposed to be located at 186 Mast Road. The property is CIFZ. We have board members. We have the actual information on the project and an email from our zoning code enforcement officer. This property is located at Mast Road across from a couple of the car dealerships. On the lots that are generally, I think the other business that you might know is the Wicked Hair Salon is along this strip where this property is proposed, this development is proposed to go. Joanne, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I did receive an email from Nancy late this afternoon regarding the frontage issue. She's been working with Jason from TF Moran to try to come to a conclusion as to whether this property has frontage. And Nancy's been doing a great deal of research in the files from going back to like 1986. And she feels that she still hasn't received a solid answer from the applicant as to whether or not this may need a variance or approval by the select board. So they're basically here tonight just for the board to send comments to the ZBA. They're also going to the ZBA for a special exception because in this particular zone, the CIFZ zone, car washes are permitted by special exception, so they need to get the approval for that special exception from the ZBA. And then, of course, if all of those variances are approved, there's 3 others that pertain to frontage, which may or may not be needed, depending on what Jason and Nancy come up with. They'll be back to your board with an actual site plan.
So this is before our board in accordance with our internal procedures that we provide comments of a planning nature, not really specific as to the business or what might be addressed in the approval of a site plan for the
Exactly.
zoning to consider in regards to their need to address the request by the applicant to have variations from our zoning ordinance.
Correct.
Okay.
For those who have been around for a while, probably remember that this property once had an old, I think it was a white farmhouse
Yeah, it was.
on for many years, and then there was a fire, and eventually it was torn down.
Right, okay. All right, thank you. Do any of the board members have any questions before we hear from the applicant? I'm hearing none, so at this point, welcome Jason.
Thank you, folks. Jason Hill from TF Moran. I do appreciate the opportunity to present tonight with everything that's going on. We very much are appreciative of the town to keep things moving along as much as possible while just, staying safe and all that, so thank you very much. I do have a slightly different, it's a slightly modified plan from the zoning board plan that was submitted. I don't know if you have a copy of the plan in your packages.
We were given,
I have handouts of it. It's,
I mean, this is sort of for general, if you have something more updated.
the only
you're-
difference in the plan, which I can hand out, is that there's a proposed manual service bay as well as the tunnel itself. We're proposing to have a 2-bay, like, manual service station. So that would be an additional component. It's still a car wash, but instead of having a singular tunnel with the only car wash.
I'm not sure we got that, Jason.
No, it's
The plan that
recently-
they have in their packet is dated February 17th.
That's the plan that you have in your packet.
Right.
Yes.
Which has a singular tunnel, and the vacuum stations on the east side of the project. This is where the Mike's Auto,
Yes.
car
Right.
repair shop is. And we've recently made some, the only modifications to the plan that we're looking to make would be to add this 2-station, it's a manual service area, so instead of going through the automatic car wash, the users would have the option to just get out of their vehicle and do it by themselves, by hand. There's no change in the proposed use, other than this, it's not even an accessory type use, it's just an additional service that they're looking to provide. Okay, and I have handouts, I can pass them.
That's all right, I mean, we're not really
I
here
just
to
wanted to bring you up
approve
to
the
speed.
site plan,
Yep.
so.
I wanted to bring you up to speed on that. So, briefly describe the zoning and the vicinity and all that we're looking to develop. This is a 13-acre parcel that's currently vacant, and the interesting thing about it that Joanne had mentioned that we're working through with Nancy is that there was where the rail trail currently exists, which is right here. There's the strip of land right here between our site and the Mass Road. That was originally, in doing our research, we found that was deeded as an easement and conveyed as an easement in the 80s.
Can I interrupt for a minute?
Sure,
If GTV has the ability to zoom in a little bit on that easel, because you can't really see, it's just a kind of a fuzzy fuzzy thing at this point. Yeah, that's getting better. If they can go a little bit further. Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, specifically, there's a plan number 19883, which is recorded at the registry, showing the property having its frontage on Mass Road with a right-of-way for the railroad that's running parallel in this vicinity. More recently, in '87, I think it was '87,
The right-of-way over.
the railroad sold the parcel to the town, and there's a property map, tax map and lot that was conveyed to the town of Goffstown.
Excuse me.
All right, okay, before we get into this.
That's kind of the background of.
Right, this is part of the rail trail and we have an ongoing issue as to the frontage for the lot, correct? So that's an issue that you're dealing with, Nancy, from a zoning perspective, right?
Yes, that's one of the variances that we'll need, is a variance just to develop this parcel with having no frontage off of Mass Road, having access. There's an existing easement. There's an existing permanent access and utility easement that was conveyed,
In '87.
yes, from the railroad to this property, the subject tract,
To give you the access.
for the access, permanent access, rights of repair and all that nature. So just kind of the evolution of the way we feel that the railroad had handled its authority through the sale of the parcel to the town had evolved. That's where we're thinking it had evolved from originally becoming an easement to actually becoming a property. That's something our surveyors are.
Right, okay,
So-
I understand, and we're gonna have a limited discussion on the easement, because we're not here approving the plan.
And I'll focus more on the use.
Right, so
at-
why
at
don't we
this point.
focus a little bit on the use, and then David will speak. David, I'm sure, will wanna speak to the easement and the issues there in regards to it, but
Okay.
I think for purposes of what the zoning board might be looking for us from this is a parcel that we at one point recommended CIFC.
Yes,
So this is allowed by a special exception, so if you could sort of address the use in the context of where this lot is and how you think it might work in conjunction with what general planning issues we might have, and if board members, after we hear from Jason, could then sort of address those type of questions, and then we'll get to the access
so
easement issue.
thank you. This is, like I said, the commercial industrial flex zone, which is a newly established zoning district, which I know the town is looking to maximize its commercial land. This use is required or permitted by a special exception, and it's consistent with, there is a gas station, I believe it's a Shell or a Sunoco gas station that's approximately half a mile towards the village that also has a drive-through tunnel and vacuum boom station, which is similar to what we're proposing, which looks like, this is some schematic information of a system that we'd be looking to implement for the car wash itself. The tunnel system with the vacuum boom stations, which I believe it's the Sunoco station.
Yeah, they have that.
Right down, the Shell station right down the street. So we anticipate something like this with a manual service, with 2 manual service bays. Excuse me. In terms of the site itself, we would then be, since the site is too large to have just a small commercial pad site, for this car wash, we'd be subdividing this, and the remaining acreage would just be sold to, so this would involve a subdivision as well. Roughly, this would be approximately a 2-acre site, probably a little smaller than 2 acres. The facility is comprised of just the car wash station, and there's very few employees. We do have some traffic, although the car wash, unless you have a real, like a warm winter's day or something, we don't anticipate that the traffic will be significant from this development. The road itself, I believe, in front of the site is just a 2-lane highway, one way west, one way eastbound, so we don't anticipate at this point any mitigation requirements for, traffic, but however we need to do the scoping session with the DOT, and we will be doing a traffic study before we come before you to the planning board to address any traffic, conditions. But at this point, we've had preliminary meeting with the DOT, regarding this use, in a similar location in Goffstown, and there was, a consensus that there was not a huge concern about the peak generation and traffic and creating a lot of fringe issues, although we know the highway's pretty busy, particularly in the PM weekday
Not lately.
condition. Yeah, but we feel that the busiest days that we'll have would be like a winter's day, a warm winter day when everyone's out washing their vehicles. This will process, I don't believe, I think the capacity, I can provide information on how much the out throughput of this.
Yeah, I don't think that's for,
But,
for this
that's
discussion.
really, we have plenty of queuing and circulation on our site plan, because we can control the site since we have 13 acres to work with. It's allowed us to set the property back from Mass Road a great distance, 100 feet from Mass Road. And then we have adequate buffering, more than the minimum of 10 feet, 5 to 10 feet on the side buffer. We're providing 25 feet on the side buffer, and then to the back, there's nothing. So this is somewhat set away from the, the abutting uses and such, more than what would be minimally required.
Is the abutter aware of this application? Have you spoken with the abutter?
We have not.
I have.
Okay, all right, I just wondered, because
Uh,
this is not a noticed, hearing, so,
I've requested it where I urge them to watch this evening. The abutter he's speaking of.
okay.
And that would be, we haven't spoken with either the Mike's Auto or, I guess, the opposing properties, which would be the salon, and there's another auto.
Right, which
used
would all
auto.
be noticed when we
Yep.
have our hearings, okay.
So, other things like drainage, we're gonna do test pitting and all that, we'll figure that out.
All right, but what we're talking about is locating a car wash in a section of Mast Road that's that's where there's a car wash, in less than a mile away, and there are
Yes.
car dealerships and businesses across the street.
It's consistent with the surrounding neighborhood in terms of the general usage patterns. So
Okay.
it shouldn't, by that matter, I don't think it's gonna alter the essential character or any of that, those aspects. I think it'll obviously be good because it'll benefit by, bringing another commercial property to, we know about the desire for the town to maximize its uses of the commercial property. This is a good use. It'll generate the taxable revenue. It's not gonna load the schools, obviously. It'll pay its, any impact fees, towards the development, and, it's a good use. The
All right, let me-
circulation will be a one-way circulation
All
pattern.
right, thank you,
and all that.
Jason. Let me ask, do any of, on the line here, Kimberly or Phil, do either one of you have any comments on this as to the proposed use?
No, not as the use.
All right,
I do not.
okay. Anybody here at the table have any comments as to the proposed use?
No, I don't.
Okay. I mean, I am understanding, board members, that no comments equates to a message to the zoning board that given the category of car washes as a special exception in commercial industrial flex zone, that this is a use that was anticipated that might be appropriate for this district, and given the surrounding development, seems to be in an appropriate location. Is that a fair summary of everybody's opinion?
Of mine, yes, of mine.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Pete?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
David?
I concur with the chair.
Okay, I just know that the ZBA needs to get something from us as to that, and we're trying to limit this to the planning issues. Joanne, I would like to hear from you in regards to the issue of this is also really a subdivision request and the process that should be followed from a timeline and application standpoint.
So when the application, I'm to understand that when the application goes through the zoning process and then eventually comes to us, the application will consist of the site plan for the car wash, as well as a subdivision of one other lot. So it would be a two-lot subdivision of the 13 acres.
So,
There would be additional, possibly additional, an additional access point off of 114 for the additional lot. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason.
We are proposing to have a shared driveway via,
Now you're back to the shared, okay.
Yeah,
So there'll
so-
be one shared driveway.
there'd be a cross-access easement just to benefit in this vicinity, to benefit the car wash. It'll have a cross-access easement to the shared easement, which
Okay.
crosses the rail trail.
all right, but for purposes, for looking at us, we don't see any, I guess I'm trying, does anybody see any issues with this turning into also a subdivision request when it comes back to us, if it comes back to us, if he gets the zoning board approvals? Pete,
No, I'm fine with it.
David,
No, it's, to me,
Kimberly?
it's the proper use of land. You want to develop the rest of the land.
All right, Kimberly? You okay with this?
No, I think it's fine.
And Phil?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
All right, sorry, I can't see nodding heads, which I can when everybody's together, so we gotta sort of go through this drill, and I wanna make sure the zoning board gets clear, something clear from us. All right, Pete,
Now,
did you
just
have-
one question. You're leaving 11 acres left, is that true?
11 or 12, yes.
11 or 12. So is there any plans in the future to subdivide that you know of? I'm just curious with the driveway situation, if it's gonna keep going like this.
We don't know who would own the property at this point. It's gonna be sold to a separate entity and will not be retained by the same entity, is my understanding, that develops the car wash. It'll be two different entities. So my answer, I guess, is no, there's no plans yet. It would have that property, the remaining property would still have access via this easement. So if there was a future subdivision, we would need to create further easements, unless we wanted to get another railroad crossing. Well, unless we want to negotiate an easement with the town to cross the rail trail again, which I would think the town would want to minimize the amount of crossings. This does
All
a
right,
good
well,
job.
now
It
that
is-
we're
it is
talking
a state
about
highway.
crossings,
And
Yeah, so
the
it's,
two entrances off State Highway on the same parcel might have difficulty at DOT.
that's another point, yes. So right now, the plan would be would create a shared driveway for these two parcels, and
all right,
That's it.
assuming that the frontage issue gets resolved, what comments might planning board members have in regards to the access and the rail trail? David?
For access, Jason, once you cross the rail corridor, you show a T intersection. Did you consider a straight-through intersection to service the rest of the parcel for future development?
yeah, we have looked at that. However, this area is planned on being used for a drainage facility. So there would be a drainage pond in this area, so I could, as we go through the planning phase, I could fine tune that and see if it's a better design to go with at least allow for a T or a cross at four-way intersection, and not only limit people to having to turn right. So I could basically do something like this and have the ability to go this way and this way on that future parcel. We can look at that.
Okay, David, as to the issues with the access and the easement?
Yes, the easement across the former rail corridor, that is, the town is aware of that. The town has a survey plat 35888, which shows that easement on it. And that was a survey that the town hired to be done. And that easement, that right-of-way over the rail corridor is shown on.
That would be the Proven and Lorber plan, I believe.
Correct.
Yeah.
35888, 888. I have a lot of knowledge on that particular area, and one thing I have is there's a unkept growth of trees and bushes that are on town land that effectively shield this property from Mass Road, except for what your driveway entrance would be. And,
Yeah, they're located,
yes, all through there. And, you know, that there could be some consideration if for developing that parcel, if you wanted to do some landscaping, you need to talk to the
in
park
the
de-
right of way or.
Yes, yes,
to
because it is,
screen the rail
it is the
trail from
abutter's
Mass
land,
Road.
and you can't touch any of those trees or bushes, but maybe if you talk to the park department and the town.
Well, I think the issue is framed more from a visibility standpoint in regards to traffic and
Yes.
the rail trail at that point, because if you, right now, the screening is not an issue because there's nothing else going on back there from a rail trail perspective. So there might wanna be some consideration of what makes it the safest
The-
for the rail trail usage in
The-
light
the
of the
brush-
fact that now
The
that
brush
there's
would
stuff there.
prevent line of sight
Right.
for vehicles entering and exiting and
Mhm.
bicyclists zooming along.
Right
Yeah.
now, they just have to deal with each other, but,
And then the crossing itself is something like, we could use like a crosswalk condition, or, I mean, a lot of the properties I've looked at, there's no demarcate, not a lot. I've seen several properties on the aerial mapping where there's no pathway, it just crosses through the corner of the parking lot. There's many properties
well,
where
but that
there's.
depends what you're looking about. Technically speaking, the rail trail, for example, goes behind the Shell station, rather than across the front of it, which is what everybody does, or most
No.
people do. So, knowing that, I think, that just so you're aware, I think the planning board would have concerns about making sure that that traffic going over any access point is appropriately noticed for cars and vice versa for bicycles or walkers. I do think there were certain provisions done on the Mill Street plan in that regards. I can't remember specifically what they were, but
I can,
I think that's
Look
why
into
when you
that.
look at various locations for the rail trail, you may not see consistently.
yeah,
I-
same treatment, yeah.
This particular section of the rail corridor was planned to be constructed last summer. And Jason, I'm the project engineer for building the rail
Okay.
corridor, so I had
The right
engineering
plans.
plans of horizontal location and vertical elevation of the trail
For the design,
from,
Yeah.
from the abutters property on the east all the way for 600 feet, and I'll be glad to share those with you. It shows the horizontal location and the vertical elevation of the future trail.
yeah, that would be important, thank you.
From an access standpoint, do any board members feel a need to comment to the ZBA? Anybody present in the room? David?
I'm in favor of the development of that property, and I would hope that the ZBA grants the variances to allow.
Well, we're not taking a position on what the ZBA should or should not do.
Yeah.
We're making a comment based on the planning.
We have no comment.
So I think the issue is as to the traffic, I'm not seeing anything in regards to the easement from a planning perspective that I don't think Jason can't address with plans for the site in front of the planning board. Peter?
I'm good with it. I think, it sounds like we got everything covered, and I don't know if we have to physically say, yes, we're
Right.
for it, but
I don't think we have any,
I don't see any issues.
we don't have any non-comment. We
Right.
don't- Kimberly, where are you on the access?
I'm all set. I think it's fine.
Bill?
Yeah, no, not a problem, not
All
a
right.
problem at all.
Okay.
I have one planning comment that I'd
Okay.
like Jason to know about. On the east boundary of this 1 acre parcel, you show some bushes sketched in there next to the yes. Much of that boundary line has a man-made berm that's on the west side of the boundary line. And that berm serves to keep water from flowing over the boundary line, yes.
Yeah, there's a shallow, the contour line shows like a
There's a-
shallow area coming through like
I'm
this.
aware of a considerable amount of water flowing off the upper elevations to the rear of this parcel and flowing through the parcel, getting to various culverts that are on the rail trail area. So I just want to draw to your attention that there's considerable stormwater flow that should be examined carefully.
All right, I think that
you.
encompasses the planning board's consideration of comments to go to the ZBA. Does any other planning board member have any comment on anything so far?
No comment.
No?
Okay, all right. I can't, do any board members recall whether we actually do a motion on this, or we have an understanding and Gail will do a memo to herself?
I can do a memo.
Joanne, do you recall whether we actually took a vote on this the last time we did it, or did we just send it over?
Yes, the last few times you took a vote, and then I sent a memo to the ZBA.
All right, I'm looking for a
I'll
motion in
make a
accordance
motion that we have no comment to the ZBA.
as to
Second.
the access and that the
Right.
use we see is appropriate.
Right.
Okay.
Second.
And that's been seconded by Phil. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. Pete?
Yes.
David?
I agree.
Gail?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
I vote yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you folks for your time, appreciate that.
Joanne, if you could do that memo, that would be
Thank
great.
you.
The next application before us tonight is an item of old business. This is map 6, lot 1. It's a site plan review application for proposal to build an 81,950 square foot commercial indoor recreational field. It is New Hampshire Sports Dome, Monahan Family LLC, and NHSD Holdings LLC. The applicant is at 376 Goffstown Back Road, Tower Lane. This application has already been accepted as complete and has been continued since March 6th. I understood that Nick was here. The paperwork I have does not have a number for Nick. Joanne, do you know whether Nick is here or not?
Yes, but there should be his cell phone number on that list.
Derek has it. He's gonna give him a call. Oh, I see it. I'm sorry, I'm looking at,
3, 4. Say what?
he's here.
Been watching you guys out.
Oh, all right, okay. All right, and I'm here with my Lysol, Nick,
Oh,
to wipe this down, because who knows what Jason brought in with him.
I work with him and I don't disagree.
Ow! Ow!
Oh no, I like Jason. He's a very good engineer.
All right,
Thank you.
you are welcome. Thank you for coming.
Nice job, Barbara.
Thank you.
Barbara, this is Kimberly. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to say to the audience that I am also watching you on YouTube under Goffstown TV. So if anyone at home doesn't have access to cable, you can also watch it via YouTube.
Okay, thank you for that update.
Yeah, Barbara,
Yes.
just so that you're aware, I can hear you fine. I can hear Kimberly, I can hear Peter. I have a little difficulty with the applicant, and I have a little difficulty with David. I can hear Joanne fine.
All right, they're gonna check, it's,
I'll make sure I project.
Can I
rep.
slide this table back? I'm just gonna move it a little bit more center. I've turned the volume all the way up on the conference phone.
Thank you, everybody, for your patience. We're sort of working the kinks out of this kind of electronically serviced meetings.
Thank you.
All right, we have heard this application before. We have a presentation. We will open a public hearing for comment and address any issues. We will need to deal with waivers and conditional use permits with this application. Joanne, could you bring us up to date as to where we were and where we are today?
Yes, so the last time Nick came in and appeared before the board was 2 weeks ago. And there were just a few minor things that he needed to adjust, and he said he would get us the plans in time, which he did. We've all reviewed them, and the outstanding comments or the answers to the outstanding comments are noted in bold on your staff report. So the first one down under overview, the very last sentence, it was recommended that the applicant provide the board with an update regarding the removal of trees along Goffstown Back Road. And that discussion had to do with whether those trees were located in Manchester or Goffstown. So I'm not sure what Nick has found out about that, but
Do you want me to answer these as you go, Joanne?
For
Or no?
purposes of moving
Sure.
along, if that's okay, Joanne, let's just address them as we go along.
Sure.
I think that's easier. Okay.
So we did verify they are in Manchester, and we are pursuing that with the city of Manchester to have them removed. The abutting owner has no issue. They'd actually prefer to see those trees removed. So it's something the project team's going to work with the city of Manchester to get those trees removed.
Phil, could you hear Nick?
Yeah, I can hear him a little bit better. If I have a problem hearing him as we go on, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you. Parking, Joanne.
The next one is under comments from the traffic report from Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. One of the things that they had suggested was that bicycle parking area be shown, which is now included on the plan. Number 7 was a recommendation for a drop-off area, which has been added to the plan set. And the applicant followed up with Southern New Hampshire, and they discussed these items over the phone. So we're all set with what they were recommending and how the applicant has addressed them.
All right, and we previously found that this had regional impact, and Manchester was actually present at the presentation 2 weeks ago. Have we heard anything further in regards to any concerns from Manchester?
No, we have not heard anything since the meeting 2 weeks ago.
Okay, and they are, I will just note for the record that they are not present. Do we have anybody that's called in from the public on this at this point, Derek?
We have, the only people on the line are, there are 2 non-board members or non-staff online.
Oh.
Could speak up now if you want to give them the opportunity.
All right, we'll deal with that in the public hearing, but we haven't, nobody directly involved with the plan has heard from Manchester. Okay, thank you.
Okay. The next one is the waiver. They had asked for a waiver for the trees, and there was a note that was supposed to be added to the plan stating that all trees that do not survive will be replaced for the life of this project. The waiver was not acted upon. It was only accepted. It was only addressed for acceptance only. So that still needs to be reviewed and voted on one way or another.
All right, before we move on, Nick, where do we stand on trees?
The owner took no exception to that requirement.
Okay. So, in regards to the note, there's no requirement. You went through with us last time the issue of 14 versus 19 trees in regards to their location and what was the practicality of the screening that you were trying to provide. Why don't you go through, just for purposes of plan review, where the plantings are that you're proposing to do?
Understood. So relative to the waiver that's being requested, we are proposing 14 trees where 19 are required. You can see where those shade trees are located along our frontage. The portion in which they are not proposed is really this back portion closest to the cul-de-sac. You can see there's an existing tree grove located directly opposite the access drive. This is an area that's either wetlands or wetlands buffer, which would preclude the ability from immediately removing those trees without some sort of other approval. Given this location, they don't provide a substantial benefit. Relative to the design of the overall site, it's a diverse cross-section of trees that are being provided currently. We have 30 trees that are proposed and 186 shrubs. Relative to the trees, we're talking Norway spruce, blue spruce, American elm, scarlet oak, red maple. So these are substantial trees that are being planted. The reason why we're not showing them in the back here, again, this is a steep slope that leads down to the drainage swale. They don't provide a screening effect. Having additional trees in closer proximity to the air-inflated structure is not desirable, and being that it doesn't provide a public purpose, we have not provided them and are asking a waiver, or I should say, or a partial waiver, to not provide those trees along that one easterly section of the sports dome.
Okay. I would prefer, just because we've got sort of members on the phone in here, that we address issues as they come up. However, I think these need to be subject to public comment, so we'll come back to actually addressing the waiver. I'll point out to the board members that the requirements for the waiver are in our development regs, and the version I have, page 40. All right.
Just point out one thing, just so that you know, in the right-hand corner where there's a dark cluster of trees, that is on the property owned by the self-storage facility. It's
Correct.
not on this property. I don't have a problem with the waiver, but I just want the board to know that.
Nick, that the stuff you're talking about is on a different lot, right?
So the existing tree screen, the existing tree screen is
It's
located
owned
on the
by-
adjacent lot, correct? This is the property line right here, which is very tight to the roadway. So again, providing trees along this small section, we're asking for that relief because there's no public benefit.
Okay. And you're also asking for some conditional use permits.
We are. Now, what we did at the last meeting, if I can speak to this, is we had narratized for you and said, all right, this is why these conditional use permits make sense. This is how we met these requirements. We were kindly asked to go back and just recraft our request so that it could be read line by line. I believe there is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 criteria for a conditional use permit. So I do have those kind of copy pasted into an appropriate order, and I'd be happy to read those into the record if that would be appropriate at this time.
I think it would be.
All right, very good. So relative to what we had prepared for this evening, I just wanted to make sure I spoke to that first. We are planning to address the conditional use permits, the waivers. We had a very lengthy discussion on sight lines and the other components of the structure. We're happy to reiterate any component of that, or otherwise, though, we're going to stick to really those 3 items that we're asked to come back for, which is the 2 conditional use permits and the waiver. So if there's components that the chair or others would like to hear or hear again, please just ask, and I'll make sure that I reiterate those.
Before you start, Sarah, our town engineer, is on the line. Sarah, you just heard Nick present, sort of go through the waiver and the conditional use permits, which are sort of more of a planning issue, and presented that he wanted to deal with the sight lines and I think something else. Are you?
If we need to, we spoke on it at length at the last meeting, and I think there was an overall comfort.
We need to hear from our engineer
Oh, sorry.
that those at-length discussions
Were adequate.
successful.
Very good.
Sarah?
Yes. We haven't had any sightline issues with that intersection that I know of.
Okay.
Okay, different question.
So what are there any issues with the engineering of this site as it exists?
The only real outstanding issue that we have, I sent it over to Nick today when I got it, is just the review of the retaining wall. We just got our estimate from a third-party engineer, so that will have to still be reviewed.
Okay. And that was actually mentioned, as I recall, at the last meeting in regards to the issue of the retaining wall. So that, Joanne, am I correct, that would need to be added to the conditions?
Yes.
Okay.
Typically, the changes to the actual design of the retaining wall don't really require substantial changes to the plan. So I think that the approval of the retaining wall design could be a condition of approval. We would just get that before the plans are signed.
So DPW administrative approval of the wall? Okay. I don't have Tim here writing down all the conditions, so we're trying to wing it
Doing
for
that,
him.
sorry.
All right. So, Nick, you have done the criteria for the conditional use, and I think I sort of went off track with you for a minute. So what did you want to address next?
Okay. We'll take up the conditional use questionnaire as it deals with the table 4.3, which is the building footprint.
Right, thank you.
All right. I won't read back over the general description of the project, but I will note that the need for a footprint in excess of 50,000 square feet for the air-supported structure is a function of the full-size turf field which it encloses. And as such, a smaller footprint cannot be provided while also providing a regulation soccer field. So the reason why our air-supported structure is as big as it is, it needs to be that size in order for us to have a full-size soccer field, which is the intent of the project. So the applicant is requesting the planning board consider the following conditional use permit to allow a structure footprint of approximately 81,500 square feet, which is the 80,500 square foot indoor sports field and an approximate 1,000 square foot connected support structure in the industrial district. First criteria, the use is specifically authorized in the ordinance as a conditional use. A building footprint in excess of 50,000 square feet in the industrial district is specifically authorized by a conditional use permit as listed in section 4.3, Table of Dimensional Regulations, sub-note 5 of the ordinance. Next criteria, if completed as proposed by the applicant, the development in its proposed location will comply with all requirements of this article and with specific conditions or standards established in this ordinance for the particular use. Few line items. As a result of the Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting held on December 3rd, 2019, the board voted 5-0 to grant an application for a variance to allow a commercial indoor recreational facility restricted to athletic use only, an indoor sports field in the industrial district. And as a result of the Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting held on January the 7th, 2020, the board voted 5-0 to grant an application for a variance to allow a maximum building height of 75 feet, or 45 foot height is the maximum permitted, specifically for an air-supported structure. With variances approved for height and use, the development and its proposed location will comply with all requirements of this applicable section and with the specific conditions and standards established in the ordinance for the proposed use. Next criteria. The use will be compatible with the neighborhood and with adjoining or abutting uses in the area in which it is to be located. Through their diligent evaluation of the application, the zoning board identified the important views they felt were important to the town consistent with the ordinance. 1, the sight line evaluated from the nearest residential property. 2, traveling east on Goffstown Back Road. Both show the visibility of the structure is mitigated by a proposed supplemental landscape berm with evergreen plantings. The third area of interest was the sight line traveling west on Goffstown Back Road into Goffstown from Manchester. Was also evaluated, showing the anticipated view after the initial build-out as well as 20 years after. The zoning board determined the available sight lines to the structure to be acceptable for the neighborhood and compatible with the adjoining abutted uses, which consist of residential and commercial uses such as self-storage, a gas station and convenience store, fast food restaurant, youth daycare, and an adjacent religious place of worship, as well as the commercial towers. So that same presentation that was provided to the zoning board was also provided here to the planning board 2 weeks ago. The use will not have a substantial adverse impact on vehicular or pedestrian safety. As part of the site plan preparation, we've prepared a traffic impact and access study, which concludes the project traffic can be safely accommodated by the adjacent roadway network without the need for traffic mitigation measures. Next criteria, the use will not have a substantial adverse impact of the appearance and visual quality of the surrounding neighborhood. This is a little similar to one of our previous questions. In that the case was made to the zoning board for the proposed height and appearance of the structure. We prepared sightline sections, plans, and renderings, including a photo key sheet for the pertinent sightlines from the surrounding area, which again was also provided to the planning board and reviewed at the board meeting 2 weeks ago. Prior to the balloon tests that were conducted, which were on December 2nd, December 3rd, and December 7th, a sightline evaluation was conducted from the areas indicated on the photo key sheet using the existing 205-foot towers on site to approximate sightlines to the proposed indoor sports field. These photos were then used in coordination with the balloon tests to develop renderings in locations where visibility appeared likely. The information prepared for the zoning board and by evidence of their use and height variance approval show the use will not have a substantial adverse impact on the appearance and visual quality of the surrounding neighborhood. Last criteria, the use will be adequately serviced by necessary public utilities and by community facilities and services of a sufficient capacity to ensure the proper operation of the proposed use. The necessary public utilities required for this facility are available and are of sufficient capacity to ensure the proper operation of the use. We do have an approval letter from Grassmere Water Precinct. Plans have been reviewed by the fire department. Sarah has had the opportunity as town engineer to review them as well, and we had just some minor items remaining. So I think we are safe to say that we've met that criteria as well.
Do any board members have any questions for the applicant in regards to the conditional use permit requested in regards to the footprint of the proposed structure?
No.
No.
All right, I'm not hearing any, Nick, so why don't we address your second request in regards to the alternative parking?
Thank you. Relative to the alternative parking arrangement, I'll give you a little bit of subtext before that I read the actual conditions. I think it's important to note there's no directly comparable use for the indoor sports field within subsection 725, Table of Off-Street Parking Requirements of the zoning ordinance. As such, the number of parking spaces proposed has been selected based on the anticipated use of the indoor field and substantiated by studies identified by the Institute of Traffic Engineers, ITE, Parking Generation Manual 5th edition for Use Code 488 Soccer Complex. In the ITE manual, the average parking supply ratio for the 12 study sites with parking supply information is 41 spaces per field. Again, we're proposing just the one field here. All parking demand counts in the database were taken during a tournament or league games for which a series of back-to-back games were held on each field. In order to provide an appropriate level of conservatism, TFM has selected the 85th percentile peak period parking demand per field for the study generating the largest parking demand. So of all the studies provided, we picked the one with the largest number, which was 74.31. We rounded up to the nearest whole space at 75. Thus 75 parking spaces should be sufficient, and 100 parking spaces have been provided. So the applicant is requesting the planning board consider the following conditional use permit for an alternative parking arrangement. The use is specifically authorized by the ordinance as a conditional use. A conditional use permit is specifically authorized within the zoning ordinance per section 752 and 7522, alternative parking arrangements, to allow an alternative parking arrangement based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Guide and evaluation of comparable facilities, which is what we have done. If completed as proposed by the applicant, the development in its proposed location will comply with all requirements of this article and with specific conditions or standards established in this ordinance for the particular use. I'm not going to reread these, but
Yes.
zoning board voted 5-0, zoning board voted 5-0, and then additionally, through meetings with town staff, planning, engineering, and fire, it was suggested the ability to build surplus parking. This was also something that Southern Planning brought up as an idea. Should it be required, was desirable. As such, a location for an additional 22 parking spaces has been identified on the site plans, with the impervious surface accounted for in the stormwater management report for the project. This would allow the applicant to build these spaces at any time, as the stormwater management facilities have been over-designed to accommodate them. So they won't have to come back to the planning board. For some reason we're short on parking, they just go build the spaces. With variance approved for height and use and the availability to build additional parking, the development in its proposed location will comply with all requirements of the applicable section and with the specific conditions and standards established in the ordinance for the proposed use. The use will be compatible with the neighborhood and with adjoining or abutting uses in the area in which it's to be located. This is the same criteria that you heard with the prior application. The use will not have a substantial adverse impact on vehicular or pedestrian safety. Again, it's the same criteria that we heard. A TIS was completed. It shows there'd be no negative impacts to the adjacent intersections. The use will not have a substantial adverse impact of the appearance and visual quality of the surrounding neighborhoods. Same criteria that we discussed at the initial. And then last but not least, the use will be adequately serviced by necessary public utilities and by community facilities and services of a sufficient capacity to ensure the proper operation of the proposed use. Same answer.
Thank you. And Nick, thank you for doing that. The file will reflect correspondence of February 21st, which we had at the last meeting, in which the narrative was provided to us to address those issues. But I do like to go through each condition, even in Jim Raymond's absence, to make sure that we get them all on the record appropriately. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant in regards to the conditional use permits? Peter?
I have, on the parking,
Yes, sir.
the 21 extra spaces that'll be developed if necessary,
sir.
who's gonna determine if that's necessary?
There was something that we had a chance to talk a little bit about at the last meeting. The reality is, if the town was to say, we think you need to go build more parking, then you would certainly be within your right to do so. But the reality is, if the applicant's parking lot isn't working correctly, he's gonna be the one that's the first to say, we need to build this additional parking. We're showing the 100 spaces because we think only 75 is required. So we said, okay, we're gonna be a little more conservative just because this is a different type of use that not everyone's used to. We look at IT and they say, 41 is typical. We did 75, then we added another 25%, or another 25 spaces to that. And then the additional 21, 22 spaces on top of that. So this is really, it's belt, suspenders, and an extra tie clip here for the owner just to make sure he has more than enough parking. So I think more than anything, we're gonna see the owner who's gonna be the one who wants to build that if it's proved to be necessary.
I remember
Right,
the conversation.
at
oh,
that
the
condition
conversation we
Hold
had-
on, Joanne, Peter's following up.
Oh, the conversation we had was, seemed to be some worry about, people parking on that outer road. So if that was to happen, that would, trigger the 21 extra spots?
Yes, I'll keep it as a simple answer. If someone doesn't have an adequate parking space and feels as if they need to park somewhere else, those spaces need to be built. I would agree with that.
Well, and in recognition that that is a pass-through for another site.
Correct.
So the applicant understands that that needs to be kept clear. It's not just a question of whether people are complaining to him about having
Agreed.
to park that.
It's a
far.
safety issue.
Thank you. Joanne?
I did add that as condition number 10.
Why am I looking at a staff report that only has 9? What am I looking at?
That's the one I'm looking at, says 9.
I have 9, Joanne.
I have no idea, but I'll tell you what it says.
Okay.
An issue as determined by the Planning and Economic Development Director, the Planning Board has the right to revisit the site plan for additional improvements.
It's on the chair's agenda, it's just not numbered as 10.
Oh, I see it. The spacing is off, Kimberly. I just saw it. Thank you. And Phil, turn your clocks off.
Joanne,
Another staff report over there,
Joanne, I apologize. This is Nick. I heard the statement "and additional improvements." We're talking about parking, correct? And additional parking versus and additional improvements?
Yeah,
Just-
why is it open-ended, Joanne?
No reason, that's just the word I chose. If you'd like to change it to parking, that's fine.
I think
Just
in
to keep it germane
fairness to
to
the
it.
applicant, it's parking that we're talking about.
Thank you.
So Barbara, I have a question.
Phil?
Yeah, on the parking spaces, I understand because the attachments and information that Joanne had sent us when they explain about the land use and stuff and the descriptions. I guess though, I'm just wondering on the calculation for the parking. I understand that there are no bleachers, there are no seats in here. Now, I guess though, if we had a facility that had seats, you'd have a number of seats and you'd be able to do a calculation as to how many people, there's a capacity in there. Is there anything as far as the capacity in the facility, let's say the amount of spectators, that might affect the parking?
Well, let me do my best to answer that. This is Nick.
Here, department has
Relative
the
to
capacity
capacity
limit.
of the building, it'll be predicated on the building permit. So the fire department will establish that number. My understanding is that number is not gonna exceed 200.
Now, I guess though, that's what my question is based on. If you take that maximum, let's say 200, is that parking capable of handling that capacity?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Other questions from board members? Other questions from board members on anything in regards to this application? Nick, I just want to bring up again the the noise issue, you presented a lot of data in regards to the amount of noise that's gonna be created by the powering, equipment for this. And your representation is that it meets our, noise ordinance, and that this should not be an issue in regards to anything off-site. And you're not exactly in the middle of residences, so I'm not really concerned about that, but when we talk about noise, it's a lot different than standing next to the piece of equipment generating it.
Understood. We did provide a narrative as to the acoustical evaluation. It's a very short sentence or two, if you'd like me to reread it, just for everybody's memory.
Sure.
Okay. An estimation of sound power levels and specifications for the proposed sound generating equipment are provided in this letter. Based on the values presented, the calculated sound pressure at a distance of 200 feet is 44 dBA, and a distance of 400 feet is 38 dBA. Per the Handbook of Environmental Acoustics by James P. Cowan, 1994, Chart of Common Sounds and Associated Sound Level, dBA, this is equivalent to a library or a bedroom at night. Please note the closest property line with a residential building is located approximately 346 feet from a sound source associated with the mechanicals of the air-inflated structure, and the residential home on that property is located at a distance of 450 feet. So we used the appropriate guideline relative to sound generation and applied it to our project.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members? Sarah, so your representation is that the retaining wall, review and new plan is something that can be handled administratively?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, if I'm not seeing any more comments, Nick, do you have anything else?
Do not.
All right, at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. There is no one present in the room for public comment, so I'm going to ask our town administrator if they're to open up the public lines. Is there anybody on the line that would like to make a comment in regards to this application before the board? This is 376 Goffstown Back Road, Goffstown, New Hampshire. This is a sports dome proposal for tax map 6, lot 1. I'm not hearing any public comment from anybody on the phone. Hearing no public comment, I am going to close the public hearing at this time.
Barbara, I have a few more comments to make.
Okay?
In the list of suggested conditions, I just wanted to propose more than three additional. There needs to be something in there about the note about the trees being cared for in perpetuity.
I've got that one written down.
Can I add that that was also a condition of the zoning board
And-
approval?
Hold on, Joanne, just so you know, that was apparently a condition of the ZBA approval.
Okay.
So I don't have the ZBA. I will just say that I want to make sure if we're going to make it a condition of our approval, it is exactly the same as what the ZBA.
Want me to pull it up?
Okay.
Yeah, Gail's going to pull it up while you're talking. What else did you have?
About the retaining wall, we need to add that as a condition. It's in Sarah's comments, but I failed to include it in the conditions. So I had a question for Sarah. So the PW would require the wall design by a third-party engineer to be paid for by the applicant. However, normally we also have that same engineer look over the construction of the wall, and I wanted to check with Sarah if that would be a condition here.
Yep. Comment number 6 of my comments says that there's site inspections required and retaining wall construction is included in that.
I've got it, Sarah.
So that number 6 needs to be included, as well as I believe Sarah's comments number 7, which requires the drainage maintenance agreement, and number 8, which requires the sewer staff to provide final review before the plans are signed. W normal operations.
Have there been any issues with sewer review or the drainage on the site? I'm not hearing any, and the applicant is indicating he doesn't think there are any.
My understanding is our septic designer has reviewed it with the town. There were some minor edits requested. Edits have been made and sent back. Unfortunately, with town hall closing, He hasn't had the opportunity to send back the form. I'm assuming he'll get to it as soon as he's able.
So a condition, that condition is
That's
in the works as we
perfectly
speak?
fine.
Okay. Anything else?
It's kind of just in case Mike Yurgo has any final comment. We don't really expect there to be. I wanted to include it in there.
It's a reasonable request.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So on your report, Sarah, we're gonna add 6, 7, and 8.
And then also the one about the retaining wall.
The ZBA comment, Gail was looking it up.
Oh, the retaining wall? No.
No, the trees.
Yeah,
The retaining wall, just for a minute, Gail, I think Sarah's point is that her comment number 6 addresses the retaining wall.
Oh, that's right, okay, let me cross that out, okay.
All right, Gail?
okay. There was a motion made to grant the variance to allow the building height of 75 feet. And then I asked if they would add a condition that, that it be specified that it's an air-supported structure and that the landscaping proposed is always maintained. And I explained that the planning board may have landscaping requirements that are more stringent, and that's okay, but if they are less stringent, then ours are to be combined with them.
Gail, what's the date on that approval?
January 7th,
Thank you.
and that amendment was made to the motion.
All right, I thought that what we were talking about was the trees.
So the screening trees, which are these folks here, these folks here.
The 14 screening trees. So what do you think the applicant is proposing in regards to an agreed-upon note on the plan for landscaping note?
Between what we discussed with the ZBA as well as the planning board, any of these trees that are required, are being provided for the purposes of shielding portions of the development, if they are to be dead or diseased or otherwise, they need to be replaced.
All right, so I understand there to be a distinction between trees and shrubs. That's why I'm asking.
Correct.
Well,
and-
normally, if I could just add to that, I mean, that's true, but are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, but normally, an applicant is supposed to have the site plan, whatever the site plan was approved as, is supposed to continue on unless they change the site plan and have approval from the town. So if many of, say, the bushes die, they're still supposed to replace them.
I understand that. At the beginning of the meeting, though, we were talking about trees, and the ZBA approval was landscaping, so I just wanted to make it clear.
No
that we're
ambiguity
talking-
on the applicant's side. If it's landscaping at large,
Okay,
we want it to be an attractive facility. We want people to enjoy their experience.
okay. Any other issues for board members?
Barbara,
Phil.
I had a comment on the thing about the waiver for the trees, so I'm just not sure when's the appropriate time to talk about that.
Well, I think if I've got no more comments on the plan, we are going to address the waivers, conditional use permit, and then I will be looking for a motion on this application. Everybody okay with proceeding on that? All right. A waiver has been requested in connection with this plan. The waiver was granted for acceptance purposes only, and it was in regards for 14 street trees where 19 are required. A waiver is granted where application of the regulations would cause practical difficulty. We have the ability to waive the specific plan when we find that it does not affect the purpose and intent of the regulations. Is there a motion to grant the waiver for 14 trees as compared to the required 19, as the granting of it will not adversely affect the purpose and intent of these regulations?
I'll make that motion.
Peter has made the motion. Is there, David has
Second.
seconded? Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, Barbara, I just wanted to, one thing though I wanted to bring up on it, and I agree with the waiver, and I'm looking at the little plans, and my recollection is that there's an emergency exit looking at the
street?
And it's over towards where they're requesting the waiver for the trees.
At the end of the
Because I remember
Yeah.
when I was,
Yeah, there were doors along the outside, yep.
right, now I understand, and when he said the capacity here is 200, that's still quite a few people. If something were to happen, you take the exits and you figure how many people, if you just average how many people are going out in that area, I just see people going out those emergency exits, and I think that not having the trees there, that's the direction they'd want to go, rather than going left and going across between a building that they're trying to leave and the trees. So that's my reason for supporting the waiver.
So not having the trees there is actually beneficial
benefit.
in the case of an emergency
Yes, to me.
egress. Okay, Peter,
Barbara, should we amend that to say specifically where those trees are being eliminated from? Is that necessary?
I don't know that we control the specifics of where, I think
Well,
it was more for a screen, Nick
Well-
was saying that the most likely screening point would be there. I mean, we can say as presented in the plan.
As presented in the plan is probably the easiest way, because there's two components to there's the number of trees, and they're supposed to be separated at a certain distance. So the reason why I point out that it's
Oh,
in
'cause
this
that's where it
area
would continue
specifically
on.
is because that's the area in which they're not provided along that length. And if we were to continue them at 40-foot spacing, then it would meet the requirements, but we're asking not to provide them there for the reasons given.
Thank you, Peter, so we'll take that as an amendment. Any further discussion on the waiver request for the trees? All right, seeing none, I'm gonna call for a vote. Peter?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
I vote yes. The waiver is granted. The next request in regards to this matter is a conditional use permit for our regs in regards to table 4.3, maximum building footprint greater than 50,000 square foot. The applicant has graciously gone through the criteria for us during the course of the meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that we grant the 80,500 square foot and able to put in the soccer field.
Making the findings as the applicant has requested in regards to the conditional use permit.
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll
Yes.
second it.
Phil, we'll take Phil. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, Peter?
Yes.
Actually, it's not that way. It's a roll call, so vote yes or no. So Peter, yes. David?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
I vote yes. The conditional use permit in regards to the footprint is granted. There is also a request for a conditional use permit in regards to alternative parking arrangements. The applicant has addressed in the record the requirements of our regulations. Is there a motion? Peter?
I'll make the motion.
It's motion machine tonight.
Well, I think it's hard if you're calling in probably.
Yeah.
to be the one
I
making-
don't know. I
think-
mean-
Give them a hard time.
Yeah.
If you watched the selectmen's meeting last night, I think I made all the motions on that one too.
On a roll.
All right, is there a second? David?
I will second.
David. All right, is there any, so this motion is similar to the prior motion, only as to the alternative parking arrangements. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Peter?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The second conditional use permit is granted. Board members, we are now left with an application. The waiver and conditional use permits have been granted. Staff has proposed 10 conditions plus conditions 6, 7, and 8 from the Department of Public Works report, along with what will be a 14th condition, which is in regards to the planning, the requirement to maintain the landscaping as approved.
Barbara, can I just add something to condition number 7?
And what would that be?
So it's please provide an easement document for recording purposes for the relocation of the emergency access easement. I just wanted to add, signed by all easement holders.
Oh, yes, the infamous access easement. Yes, we would like that signed by all easement holders. Okay.
And just one question, number 9 states that the easement relocation will need to be approved by the select board. It says that was recommended by the town administrator, but this is a private easement, so I'm not sure the select board would get involved with that.
That note is news to me, so I
I think we can eliminate 9 based on Derek's
Okay.
input. I don't think
Okay.
we had select board approval of the other written documents associated with this project and various lot developments. They probably
No.
don't want to get involved in it now.
Yeah, I'm good.
The infamous Tower Lane. All right. So I think we have 13 conditions then. That would be 1 through 8. And what is, would be 9, should parking become an issue, along with then what is going to be 10, 11, 12, site inspection, drainage maintenance agreement, and the review of plans by Mike Yurgo for sewer, and then the landscaping as 13.
Which one includes DPW review and approval of the retaining wall?
On the Department of Public Works, in the packet that was mailed to us,
Yes.
number 6.
Number 6, thank you.
All right.
I see it, thank you.
And I understand from Sarah that that actually, as to the retaining wall, is actually in the works as recently as this afternoon. So, is there a motion to approve or not approve this application with the 13 conditions?
I make a motion to approve the application with the 13, what was it, up to 14 conditions that we discussed.
I think it's 13 because we took out 9.
Took out 9. 13.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. Peter?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
I vote yes.
Thank you
Application is approved. Thank you for
very
coming
much.
in.
Great night.
The next item before us tonight is map 16, lot 8. This is La Pointe. Joe Wickert is here on behalf of the applicant. I think, is Joe here?
Jimmy, I'll check the parking lot on my way
I
out.
bet he's in the parking lot. I'm gonna call him right now.
The delay is like 5 or 6 seconds, so. Thank you.
Get my next Lysol wipe out. Joe, this is Barbara Griffin. We're all set for you to come in. For those of you watching, this sort of contorted methodology is to try and comply with the existing emergency order to make sure that there are no more than 10 people at any scheduled meeting. I happen to disagree with the interpretation of that rule, but we're complying with it regardless.
You had to get that in there.
I did, I did. Well, poor Derek has had to deal with it with me over the past.
up
So
to.
we're up there for this. Sit up, Joe. Thank
All right.
you. All right, while you're setting up, Joe, I'm just gonna introduce the application. This is an application in regards to map 16, lot 8. This is a completeness review subdivision and conditional use permit for a proposal to create a 2-lot subdivision. This is a plan dated November 12th of 2019 with a revision of February 20th, 2020. There's currently a 2-story house on the premises, which is serviced by municipal water and sewer. The existing paved turnaround easement for town use due to Hague Street being a dead-end street. This property is located on Hague Street in the R2 zone. The proposed turnaround will be relocated as shown on the plan. The applicant is requesting a 2-lot subdivision and a conditional use permit to allow for 2 driveways on the newly created lot for a proposed duplex. The duplex requires a variance for the ZBA and the lot dimensions. The applicant is scheduled to meet with the ZBA on April 7th. Joanne, do we need to know anything else about this application before we make a determination as to regional impact?
There is no regional impact.
All right, and is the application complete?
Yes.
Okay. Hold on. We've
No
got-
dancing.
I thought I silenced my phone, I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. Is there a motion to find this plan has no regional impact, that it's complete and can be accepted for review?
I do.
So moved.
Bill moves, David seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm gonna call for a vote. Peter?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
I vote yes. Thank you. Joanne, why don't you bring us up to date on what this request is?
Okay, so there's currently property on Hague Street which contains a single-family home, and the applicant would like to subdivide this property into 2 lots, creating 1 new lot. And on that new lot, he is thinking about constructing a duplex. However, he would like to have 2 driveways to the duplex, 1 on each side of the units, and he doesn't have enough frontage enable to do that. So he's looking for a conditional use permit to allow for the duplex to be built. However, we sent him to the planning board first because he needs a variance because the lot itself is not large enough. The newly created lot is not large enough for a duplex, only a single-family home. So he needs the variance in order to build the duplex. But before we could send him straight to the zoning board, we had to first send him to the planning board so that the new lot could be created. Patty did speak with Joe Wickert this afternoon, and she called me and asked me some questions, and Joe would like to provide a proposal that the board just acts on the subdivision this evening and then goes to the zoning board to see if they're able to obtain the variance for the duplex, because otherwise they'll go ahead and build a single family and then a variance will not be needed.
Okay, we'll let Joe address that from a process standpoint. That sounds like something, I'll tell you, I'm a lot more comfortable with, but we'll hear from the applicant in regards to his proposal. Is there anything else we need to know about this application, Joanne?
No, not at the moment. He does need some waivers in addition to the conditional use permit at some point, but the waivers are listed in the comments. There are 3 waivers. One is stamped wetland delineation, the second is stormwater management plan, and the third is erosion control standards.
Okay, and those waivers are needed in regards to the subdivision?
Correct.
And so if we're proceeding with just a subdivision, we would not need to address the conditional use permit.
No, not at this time.
Okay, well, we'll get to hear from the applicant as to whether that's what's going on. Does anybody have any questions for staff in regards to this application? Sarah, do you have any comments on this application?
All of my comments, I believe, are very minor plan edits, because we met with them and they made a lot of changes to the plan. They were working with Mike on some of the sewer stuff.
Okay. Yeah, we, in our packet that we received on pages 13 and 14, have your comments, which do not, as you say, seem to deal a lot with sewer and just changing some minor stuff on the plan.
And I apologize, I don't have a copy of your packet.
Oh, no, thank you. I'm sort of saying that for the benefit of board members too, as to what they're looking at. And as far as any turnaround issues, you're confident that you can deal with that with the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm not seeing any questions from board members, so at this point,
Actually, I'm noticing something. I'm pretty sure on the previous application, one of the comments that was deleted was per town administrator, easement relocation will have to be approved by the select board. And I was combing through my comments trying to figure out where that came from. That is part of this application. So I think that was an error in the staff report.
That makes sense. Okay. That makes sense. Because the select board was involved in the Hague Street. Okay. Derek, do you have that?
I'm looking at that now.
Because as part of the DPW work that got done in that area with drainage, they had to deal with property owners in regards to easements for turnarounds in the drainage system, and they approved those. So thank you, Sarah, for pointing that out.
It is listed as number 23 as a condition of approval.
Yes. Page 15.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right. Joe, welcome.
Yeah, good evening, Madam Chair. I'm Joe Wickert, I'm the surveyor, and I'm here on, tonight on behalf of Lucille Burke, who's the owner. To my left is Daniel LaPointe, who's the applicant. So, I think Joanne kind of covered a lot of things well. For the purpose of the presentation, we'd like to kind of break it up into two parts. So the first part would be the creation of the lot, and we think that's relatively straightforward. So the subject property is Lot 8 on tax map 16. It currently has 292 feet of frontage and 27,182 square feet. The proposal is to create one new building lot. The new building lot would be 16,672 square feet. It would have approximately 187 feet of frontage total, and that would leave the existing house on a lot that would have 105 feet of frontage and 10,510 square feet of area. Property is zoned R2. Ordinance requires 100 foot of frontage and 10,000 square foot of area. So the lots are fully complying for the creation of the base lot. Sarah mentioned we've worked with DPW, and as you can see, I don't know if you want me to get on the board or.
Yeah, that's fine.
So currently, the sewer service ends here at this manhole. There's a little stub that goes into here. So in order to bring sewer in for the new lot, and then there's also this lot 14 on tax map 16, which is 100 by, it has a frontage on Pershing Street, but it also goes all the way through. So because that has the potential to be developed, we were asked to extend the sewer to here, which we've done. We did meet with DPW, and we've worked through a lot of those changes. And then the water line ends right here at this hydrant. So Manchester Water Works, as a general rule, their policy is when you extend a water main as part of a subdivision, they'd like you to go to the end of your frontage. And what we've done is we We've made a submission to Waterworks. They provided us comments. The revised plans address those comments for Waterworks. We have not, we have not heard back from Waterworks, so that's, we're still waiting for their sign off. But staff at Waterworks cannot make the determination about whether or not the water main has to go all the way to the end of the frontage or whether they'll approve the waiver to where we're showing it. That has to be made by the water commissioners.
So technically Manchester would require you to go all the way past the easement,
Correct.
turnaround easement?
Right, by rule, they would have us go to here.
Because it's that, they would consider that the end of the lot?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, so, but it's the same principle that, so what we have agreed to is there's a hydrant and a valve here. That's gonna be relocated to the end, and then that would still allow for this lot for a future connection. They would not need to do a water main extension. We have done, similar, waiver requests in, Manchester that have been approved. It's up to the commissioners, and so once we get past this part, they'll have a commissioners meeting next month, and we'll go in and apply to them. So I think the only thing that I just wanted to clarify is we're not really redoing the turnaround. So the existing turnaround sits in here. That's the paved turnaround that exists. This dotted line is the existing easement. So on the west end, the pavement actually goes over the limits of the easement. So because we were here, we just figured it would make sense to locate the easement so it's centered on the pavement. You know, that was, I think, the original intent, was that they wanted to have the thumb of the turnaround be inside the easement. When it got built, it just didn't get built that way. So now we were proposing to move the easement so it's centered on the thumb, which I think would have been the initial proposal. If the board or the select board doesn't want to move that, that's fine. We can leave it where it is. We just thought it would clean it up and kind of center that. So that's why we're proposing that. As part of this, we have, like I mentioned, we're going to have a sewer main extension. There's going to be 2 new sewer manholes installed for the extension. In addition to, the applicant is going to pay to replace the existing manhole at the end of the line, which is in poor condition, and DPW is asked to have replaced. The lots itself, I think, are fairly straightforward. I don't think we have, we're not asking for any waivers. I'm sorry, we're not asking, the lot complies with all the zoning ordinance and everything. We are asking for 3 waivers, as Joanne mentioned. The stamped wetlands delineation, so it's a small urban lot. You know, you can see it all. There are no wetlands on the property. We just have not had a wetland scientist go run out to certify to that. And then stormwater management and the erosion control standards. So what we have done on those 2, because it's a road front subdivision and we're not 100% sure what was going to get built, is we've added some erosion control notes and some general best management practices onto sheet 3 on the upper left. So we've added those erosion control notes. So I think that will hopefully help with the favorable action on the waiver request. So the rest of the application, I think, is somewhat straightforward. I'll go into it briefly, is that the LaPointes would like to build a duplex. We do have an application pending to the Zoning Board of Adjustment for that. That has to, Joanne had advised us to do that after we meet with you first, so we are. As part of that application, they would prefer to have 2 driveways. As we only have 187 feet of frontage, we're less than the 250 required by your ordinance to get a second curb cut, so that's why we submitted the conditional use permit. When Joanne and I were speaking, I agree with what she's saying. There's really probably not a lot of sense to spend time tonight on the conditional use permit for the extra curb cut. It will depend on what the zoning board does. If the zoning board were to act favorably on the variance request, we could always come back to this board, and we've already submitted our argument. So Joanne had suggested that we ask to be tabled to, I believe it's April, I think it's the 23rd or the 23rd, I think.
Yes,
So,
it's the 23rd.
so, you know, I think that would make the most sense, because if the zoning board were not to look favorably on the request, then the application's moot.
So do you want a subdivision approval tonight or not?
Yes, if we could get the subdivision approval and then the CUP, we can wait. If the variance is approved for a duplex, we would come back to the board
And we'd only be looking at the one lot.
for the CUP, correct? Yep. And then that way, we're not spending time on something that may or may not happen that's beyond all of our control.
All right, Joanne, do you agree that we can just act on the subdivision request with the waivers tonight?
Yes, you can do that and then continue the CUP to the 23rd of April, because they would be going to see the Zoning Board of Adjustment on April 7th, I believe. So you'll have an answer in plenty of time.
All right, I think, frankly, I thank the applicant for that. I looked at this application, I thought we were trying to put a little bit too much in the cookie jar for tonight. And so I think that makes it a lot more straightforward. All right, Sarah, do you have any comments on the waiver requests for this plan?
No, I do not.
All right, Kimberly, do you have any comments on the waiver requests?
No, I'm all set.
All right, because when I see wetland delineation and stormwater management, I sort of want to know where you are on them.
I checked the National Wetland Inventory map. He's right. There's nothing there.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so in this, do board members have any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any, so at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. On this case, this application is in regards to map 16, lot 8. It is a completeness review, conditional use permit subdivision review hearing. The action being requested tonight relates to the subdivision request, which will require waivers. There is no member of the public here to make comment. Is there anybody online that would want to make a comment on this application?
No, they're only board members and staff.
Online? Okay. Seeing no public comment, I'm going to close the public hearing at this point in time, subject to any continuance that may be granted in regards to the conditional use permit. Does anybody have any other comments or discussions about this? This is a subdivision request that creates two conforming lots. I'm seeing
No.
none. Joanne, was that you?
No, Kimberly, sorry.
Kimberly, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I said no. I have no comment.
All right, okay. Well, can I have, in regards to the waiver requests, let me get to my waivers here. Waivers can be granted when the strict application of the regulations would cause practical difficulty, and we determine that the waiver will not affect the purpose and intent of the regulations. Waivers granted would be shown on the final subdivision plan. The waivers requested are as to section 6M, stamped wetlands delineation, appendix C, stormwater management plan, and appendix D, erosion control standards. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Peter has made a motion to approve the waiver requests.
You want me to go through them, or you already did it?
I think the motion, I think your motion
Okay.
includes that it meets the standards required by
Right.
the development reg. Is there a second?
Yes. Second.
David beat you to it, Phil.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion on the waiver requests motion that's before the board? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Peter?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Okay. Waivers have been granted, and we have a request for approval of the subdivision. Waivers would need to be shown on the plan. Is there a motion?
Are you voting on the approval of the plan?
Of the subdivision, subject to,
So there would be conditions
Right.
included. I would change number 6 to just say driveway permit is required from DPW. And then on number 7, it says legal counsel shall review submittal of recordable easement, and I would add for the actual easement as shown on the plan. Like, have a reference to the fact that he's not relocating it, he's showing what's actually being used as so he's granting more land to the town to be included in that easement.
I got a question on that. If you
Peter.
look at the plan, the dotted line is the easement that we currently have.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So,
Know that we have an easement in writing, do we, Joe?
yeah, but hold on, let me finish. What they're looking to do is move that easement over, is that about 9 feet? Is that what that's saying?
Correct, yeah.
Move that easement over 9 feet, and that'll also allow them to have that if that driveway gets approved, that would also allow them to keep that driveway out of that easement, if I'm looking at that right. Would that be accurate?
So, believe this or not, when we did this, we weren't sure which way we were going. I thought it made sense to move the easement, and then when we had a meeting, it was brought up that we were moving it for that, and that wasn't what the main reason. The main reason was, right now, currently, if you plow snow off of the west side of that turnaround, you're on somebody else's property. So we were here, we were gonna have that located. But the only thing I agree with you is, we're not necessarily giving you any more easement area.
Just moving it.
Yes. It's a 40 by 45 easement, and we're gonna center it on the existing pavement. And if the board, like I said, if the board doesn't like that and they wanna keep it where it is, we're fine with that, that's fine.
What, does that
Okay.
impact, but does that impact your driveway? Would you, if you get that second driveway? Because that second driveway would end up on that easement, is that correct? If we don't move it? I see no reason not to move it, really. I
No,
mean,
I don't see any reason not
Right.
to move it. I mean, I sort of view that independent of the proposed
And that's how we originally did it, because we weren't sure whether we were going a single family or a two-family dwelling. So if it turns out that, say we go to the zoning board, and the zoning board were to approve the application, we would probably take the house and shift it further east, so it's outside of that area. It's outside of that 9-foot area that's currently part of an under easement and wouldn't be under easement anymore. So we'd probably just shift the whole thing down. But whereas we're not sure what the zoning board's gonna do, we can see what that happens and we can address that when it happens.
Okay.
Well, so I guess I'm confused. Do you want us to grant the change in the easement, or do you want to wait and see what the ZBA?
We thought changing the easement was a good housekeeping method now.
Yeah,
We
no,
just,
no, I'm
right,
okay.
yeah, we just didn't do it for the driveway. One in few times in life where we did something that worked, whatever.
An honest applicant. Joanne, did
So
you,
then for number 7, condition number 7, I would recommend changing it to say, legal counsel shall review submittal of recordable easement for the easement relocation, if it's out to be.
yeah, all right, but Joanne, in regards to the conditions, some of these conditions relate to the variance that we are not dealing with now, because now we have a straight subdivision. So if I go through your 23 comments, I don't think we need 8 anymore. And
Okay.
do we need 4? Because we're not approving a building. I mean, I guess we do, but I think 8 clearly comes out.
If they decide that if the variance is not approved, then they would be building a building and they don't need to come back to you.
All right, so we'll 1 through 7, with 7 as amended, 8 comes out. We don't need 10 because that's a duplication of what we're doing for 7, right?
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That just means that they have to provide the actual easement document so that we can record it at the same
all right.
time the plan gets recorded.
All right, so we'll keep that. do we want to get into these water and hydrant extensions, or are these more applicable to whatever the proposed development of the site is? And I guess I'm asking Joe that, the
So,
applicant that.
I think we have, I believe that this latest submission resolves all of Waterworks' concerns, with the exception of, will they approve the waiver on the length of the actual main extension? So, I think if you kept them in there, like, I'm trying to go through it, so so number 4, where is it now? So 13 is just the proposed water main must be petitioned and approved by the Waterworks. We're aware of that, so that's fine.
Okay.
This plan does show the hydrant being relocated to the end of the line. And then number 15, the configuration with the extra manhole, I believe DPW was satisfied with that, and it resolves the comment from Waterworks, although we don't have a formal okay because they're on a half schedule as well, so. So I think those comments can stay in the approval. All those comments will be resolved when we make that submission.
All right, and so administratively, we can not have those on the plan because they'll be taken care of in the final plan review.
Sure, it's up to you.
I mean, if you don't have to have a plan with 23 things.
No, I'm fine with
part of
that.
it,
You know,
I
and
just-
we'll get final sign off from DPW and Waterworks when we bring it in. so.
Okay.
Normally, Joe will submit a final plan to staff addressing these types of comments, and then they come off the
Right,
list.
so administratively, you'll make sure that all of these comments are dealt with. So the only comment that we're getting rid of is 8, which relates specifically to the variance.
Yeah.
I don't know that we need 21, but I suppose it doesn't need to go on the plan, so it doesn't matter. Since it's just a subdivision. All right. Do boards, members have any issues with this plan? We've voted on the waiver? We did, right?
Yep.
Okay. So board members, what we have is a plan that nobody is expressing any issues with the request to approve, with the omission of condition number 8, with the recognition that as to the conditional use permit, it would be continued. Is there a motion?
So you want the motion to approve the subdivision, is that what you're looking
Right,
at?
yeah.
I'll make that motion with the 22
Two.
conditions.
Is there a second?
Yes,
I'll second it.
Too late, Phil.
he had to push the button.
I'm sure there's a little delay going on. Is there any further discussion on this motion? This deals with the subdivision requested only. All those in favor say aye, or oppose. Sorry, I'm doing a roll call. Peter?
Yes.
David?
Yes,
Gail?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
I vote yes. All right, also before us is the conditional use permit. Is there a motion to continue that to what date, Joanne?
23rd, right?
April 23rd.
motion to continue the conditional use review on April 23rd.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And that will also include a public hearing in regards to anything that might come before the board on that night. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Peter?
Yes.
David?
Yes,
Gail?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
I vote yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
You too. The next application before us tonight is in regards to map 9, lot 95-1. This is a request for relief from the outer 50 of the 100-foot wetlands. And I am going to call that applicant now, because I don't hear anybody in the hall.
He's in his car.
Mr. Kilmer, this is Barbara Griffin with the Planning Board. We're all set. Thank you. back with my two previous Lysol. They're all supposed to be disinfected. Hi there, sir.
Hello?
If you want to go down to the end over there.
All right.
Do it inside or outside of the room? Great. All right, you can have a seat. I'm going to start the hearing now, which will be some administrative things. We are about to begin a hearing on relief from the outer 50-foot of the 100-foot wetland and surface water conservation district. The location of the property is at 358 East Dunbarton Road. This is map 9, lot 95-1. The property owners are Stephen and Ghislaine Tibbetts. I hope I haven't mispronounced that too badly. My apologies. 344 East Dunbarton Road, Goffstown, New Hampshire. This is in the Conservation, Water Surface Wetlands Conservation Overlay District. The property is located on East Dunbarton Road along Hardy Brook. And there has been a determination that this application for relief does not have regional impact. Is that correct, Joanne?
That's correct.
And is the application complete for this waiver request?
It's complete. However, we were not able to get comments from the Conservation Commission because they canceled their meeting from March. I did check the ordinance, and it says that the planning board will provide plans to conservation, and the conservation will provide comments. It doesn't say shall, so I'm not sure what the board would like to do about whether or not they feel that they need comments from conservation on this or not.
Well, it would seem to me we could accept it for, at a minimum, to discuss it. And we can make a determination based on our review and any comments we might get as to how we want to handle it. We're gonna this probably won't be the only plan that might end up with a convoluted route due to changes in meeting schedules because of everything going on. If the board thinks that's acceptable, could I have a motion to find it has no regional impact and the application is complete for consideration by this board?
I'll do it.
Peter has done it. Is there a second?
Yes.
David is seconding it. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm gonna call for a vote. Peter?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
I vote yes. All right, the application is accepted for review. Joanne, you wanna give us the background on this and what we're looking at, please?
Sure. The applicant currently has a house and a paved driveway along the side of their house. They would like to add an extension of gravel to the existing paved driveway so that they can access an addition of a gravelled area where they would park trailers, and they would build a barn at the end of that driveway. So in order to access the back of their land, they need to provide some sort of a extension of their driveway. They're not planning to pave it as the original driveway is paved, but they're planning to do gravel. There's the surface water disturbance is within the outer 50 feet, which is dealt with by the planning board, and the disturbance consists of 910 square feet. This property is grandfathered from any wetland setbacks, so they would not apply at this time.
How many feet again, Joanne?
910.
All right, and would they need, would they need a building permit for the proposed barn?
Yes, they would.
But they would not be subject to any, wetlands setback issues?
No, because they don't apply.
All right, but is it correct, and I guess I'll look at the applicant to see if he's nodding, the wet issues are on the other side of the lot?
As
Correct.
far as,
Okay, Joanne said correct, so, okay. And we've received a wetlands function and value report.
correct.
Yes, that was received. For Environmental did the report, and their conclusion was that it would have no negative impact upon the wetland environment or the individual species persisting therein.
Do any board members have any questions about this before we hear from the applicant?
No.
I'm not seeing any, so welcome.
Thank you. My name is Bob Kilmer from Sanford Surveying and Engineering, representing the client at map 9, lot 95-1. Basically, Joanne has covered quite a bit of it. Again, the lot was created by subdivision in 1987. So it falls in that the surface water conservation district, but it doesn't deal with the wetland portion of that. Again, what they're seeking to do is build a barn in the back here. What they've done is they purchased this property in October. They're looking to downsize. They own this property now, and they're downsizing to move into here. The barn is for storage of a tractor, lawn equipment, an ATV, and like that, just to storage to get it out of the weather and like that. Initially, when we came in January, we were attempting to use a small, approximately 8-foot wide gravel drive that already exists. But in the first review, we found out that the driveway length, as it is right now, is at the 300-foot limit. So what that puts us into is that we have to create a 16-foot gravel drive with 2-foot clearance on each side and a turnaround up to the barn for access for NFPA standards for the fire department. So basically what we're doing is just creating the larger drive, again, pushing it away from the inner 50 feet and creating it like that to the standards. Any questions yet? Let me just check my notes. Again, we were, proposing, the existing drive was roughly 65 feet in length, and we were gonna take roughly another 65 to get to the barn with storage, as Joanne mentioned, over here. Having to change that, we're basically doing about 118, 120 feet of all 16-foot wide gravel with the turnaround to the barn. And again, this will be gravel, but it can't be used as any kind of storage because the fire department needs to have that access, it has to be open.
Okay. Thank you. There were some comments from DPW. Sarah, did you have some questions or comments on this?
Yes, when Mike Yergo was doing a final check of this, he noticed that the existing driveway at the road edge looks like it actually goes onto the neighboring lot.
Correct, it does. The actual property corner is within the pavement. When they developed this property,
And
that's
they
where,
own the
that's
other
where
lot.
it ended
I'm
up.
just
At
saying-
this point, they own the other lot. Again, and to be honest, once he gets this done and gets to build the garage, he's planning on doing a lot line adjustment with the other piece. If you have a tax map here, you'll see this large piece. This is their existing house. And what they're proposing to do, once he can get his barn, the driveway in, start the barn, they're putting the existing house on the market, and he will come in with a lot line adjustment plan, correct the driveway parcel, and proposing to take all this property here and add it to the smaller lot at that point. So we will take care of that problem with the driveway at a later date.
Why aren't we taking care of it now?
But we could give it an easement
Okay.
if that's required, you know.
I don't think you can give an easement to yourself. It would have to be after the property is sold.
Well, it's not called an easement. What is it called?
I don't have Jim here, but there is something that they can do because they're different lots, so
Different
even though
lots,
it would be
right.
the same
Just-
signatories, they can do it.
Yes. And then at the time he came in to do the lot line adjustment, if he still continues to wanna do that, one of the things that easement will be extinguished along with a lot line adjustment.
Can you explain again to me what looks like it might be the green that runs against the property line there?
Green here?
No, other way. Along the property, along the abutting lot line, yeah,
Right
what is
here?
that again?
Oh, that's the tree line.
Oh, that's the tree
There's an
line.
existing tree line here, yes,
Okay,
is what the green is.
all right, thank you. All right, so Sarah, that was your comment?
Yeah, we also wondered if it would be possible to do a little erosion control just along the portion of the new gravel area, or just be very mindful of the portion of the gravel area that is the closest. Exactly, yeah.
Right,
Okay.
as far as during construction until it's,
Until it's stabilized, yeah.
yeah.
So we have that, Joanne has proposed that as a condition to provide erosion control along the northern edge of the proposed driveway extension during construction.
And I believe their other comment was a permit for a driveway,
Modification?
yes.
Yep, the driveway modification is free, available from DPW, and I believe there's a fillable version available online. So you could even get started soon.
All right, and not have to go anywhere.
Okay.
All right, board member questions or comments? Kimberly? You have anything?
No, I have no questions or comments. I was actually just looking up the site on Google Earth, and the existing gravel driveway just skirts that 50-foot outer buffer line. So, and the rest of it's lawn, and as long as it stays gravel. I mean, gravel is actually impervious. So let's not pretend it's not. But it's a paved driveway that's going to be on a lawn as it is now. So I don't have any problems with it. With that, giving them the relief of the outer 50-foot buffer. My concern would be procedurally, we tend not to step over the Conservation Commission's toes.
Well, and so I understand that, so, there are a couple of ways we can handle it. I mean, I think procedurally we could approve it subject to conservation approval. We could, continue this for approval to the next meeting after the Conservation Committee meeting. I mean, I certainly think there are a couple of ways we could handle it. I don't see this as a major intrusion on the outer 50-foot, and as Kimberly says, it's gravel, so I'm not as concerned about this request as I might be for others. I also know that people were very anxious to get going on projects this spring, and that has been dampened a little bit by the moisture we got this week. So, I don't know, board, how do you propose? Peter?
I would think that we would go with the first option that you gave, is approving it, to the point where we go to, conservation, approve it with their consent after they've reviewed it.
Other board members, your opinion. Kimberly, what do you think of that?
I think that's fine. I don't know that they would have anything other than what we've suggested, which would be good erosion control. I just feel like out of respect, we need to give them that option to weigh in. So I like that option.
All right, so we can do it for the 4 conditions that are proposed and subject to approval by Conservation Commission.
Yep, that sounds good to me.
So, just so I can clarify, they don't need to return to the planning board.
Correct, I think that's our point. I think Kimberly sort of has addressed the actual intrusion and how to deal with it. I don't see the applicant needing to come back unless the Conservation Commission changes something, in which case they would not be want something changed, in which case they wouldn't have approved the same thing we have, and the applicant would have to come back. Peter?
Doesn't make sense if they go to there and they get it approved, they have to come back here
No,
just to
I
say,
agree.
oh yeah, we agree. I mean, that's kind of a waste of time.
But if our approval is subject to this plan, if Conservation wants a change or a different condition,
I
the
agree.
applicant would need to come back to us. Any other comments from board members on that, how to proceed? So,
I'll
No,
make that motion.
fine.
let's hear with the applicant.
Can I just ask one question about her comment about the edge of that? She didn't want us to take that out. I would rather just leave it alone since it's gravel, there's grass and all that stuff within the gravel at that point too. I'd just like to leave it.
Sarah, when you made your comment, you talked about erosion control during construction, and I think the applicant would prefer to whatever erosion control he does to leave it.
No, that was towards Kimberly's comment. I thought she had a comment about the wanting to gingerly take that out, or was it just leave it alone?
I think they heard that.
Kimberly, can you respond to that? I'm not sure I heard what he's talking about.
Sure. I'm sorry if there was confusion. I was just commenting that if the existing gravel driveway that's sort of the beginning of the plan that, will be expanded upon, it's already right at that edge of the 50 foot. So I guess my comment is more that we've already got disturbance in that outer 50 foot anyway, so I don't have any concerns about this.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. All right, now I understand. Sorry. All right, anybody else have comments on this plan application? Do I have a motion?
Make the motion, we approve it after going to review at the Conservation Committee.
With the conditions of a driveway modification permit, erosion control, and best management practices. I do have a question. How does the board want to address the easement? Do we want the appropriate documentation to address the driveway lot line crossing?
I have a question. Does that have anything to do with the addition to the driveway?
I would say no. Other board members? All right, I don't know that it's an issue for this application. Other board members? Bill, you have any
I
comment?
agree with you.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with it.
So I guess Peter's motion I understood to not include addressing the driveway lot line overlap. Do any board members feel that it needs to be addressed at this time? I'm
No.
not- Okay. I'm not hearing anything. It's a private line overlap, and the lot lines will have to address it in the future. All right, so I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Phil. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Peter?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
I vote yes.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. We shall see you next at Conservation Commission.
Whenever it's such be.
That's right. We have a date, but
Let's hope they
the shifting.
Subject to change.
Subject to change, but I think, you know, if we can run meetings like this, I think we can sort of keep things moving along. All right, Joanne, do we have any other business to address tonight, and what do we have upcoming for meetings?
We have no other business, but upcoming meetings, the next meeting would be April 9th. We have the Mast Road Crossing site plan coming in for the condo, and we also have the solar arrays returning. And then on your sheet, it states McDonald's. McDonald's has been moved to April 23rd.
All right, so we do have planned business for both the April 9th and April 23rd meetings.
Correct. The deadline for April 23rd has not happened yet, so I don't know if we'll get any new business in or not.
Okay. All right, does anybody have anything else that they want to bring before the board tonight?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
I guess I have to roll call this too, so. Peter?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
I vote yes, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your cooperation in running the meeting like this. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay.